Okay, Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Good Shabbos and welcome back to Shul. Unfortunately, I was AWOL last week. So you didn't spot me at Shul last week because I was out and about trying to spot the spotted leopard in the Kruger. And I didn't find it, of course. Right? When we came back yesterday, here about 1:30, I got a WhatsApp with a photo of the leopard right in front of our unit. Yeah. I was riding through Patatanek on the way back here, and then they found the leopard finally. Spotted the leopard. So, bit bittersweet. But we saw lots of things, and we spotted the hyenas at least, so we did spot something. So, Baruch Hashem for that. But the hyenas didn't laugh at my lame jokes. Oh. So, I decided to come back here where I'm appreciated. So, Shabbat Shalom. Okay. Now, when you go to the bush, you learn many lessons about yourself because you've got time to think about things and speak to yourself in your own mind, right? And I was happy to see one improvement in my life from last year, and that is my eyesight. I was able to spot these animals in the middle of nowhere. It was fantastic. I don't know, the doctors tell me I'm supposed to be wearing glasses. And I've been a rebel my whole life, so I've never worn the glasses. And this year I could spot everything. It was fantastic. Now, that's one of the things about safari. When you go on safari, it's all about whether you can actually spot the animals and find them. Poor old Becca, shame. She ordered contact lenses months in advance, and something went wrong with the order, and they didn't get her contact lenses. She was very stressed that we're going to go on holiday, and it's all going to be a blur for the rest of her life. And Baruch Hashem, we got her contact lenses just in time so she could actually see the animals. But these animals are difficult to spot, guys. I mean, if you look at any of these rest spots that you find in the Kruger, the one thing you see is ummies with bellies like mine, but on top of the bellies they have these zooms that are about this long. Right? They look like they're carrying a sniper rifle around, trying to take photos of these animals, because animals are meant to be difficult to find. They're supposed to be camouflage in the wild so no one sees them. For example, zebras. What's a collective noun for a group of zebras? Who knows? A what? Pajama party, no. My mom used to call them prison donkeys. Anyone know? No? It's called a dazzle. A dazzle of zebras. Back in 2013, I think it was, we hosted the Cricket World Cup here in South Africa, and our mascot was a zebra. His name was Dazzler as well. Right, so it's a dazzle of, not donkeys, a dazzle of zebras. The reason why it's called a dazzle is because the white and black stripes of the zebra, at eye level, if you're a predator hunting them, as soon as they start moving among themselves, can you imagine what happens when these black and white stripes go like this? It dazzles your eyes, so that the predators can't separate one zebra from the rest. And they go into a trance, and they can't see what's going on, and they leave the zebras alone, if they do it properly, right? So that's the reason why the zebras have these black and white stripes, is to dazzle the eyesight so you can't really see what's going on. Now, when you're in the wild, and someone sees an animal, and they say to you, hey, look, there's an elephant or whatever. How long does it take before you see that elephant yourself? Long. Right? So Thursday I have to explain to you, do you see that big tree over there? Yes. Okay, now go 2 bushes to the left. Okay, yes. Now do you see the brown bush? Yes. Now the yellow bush? No, I'm still over here on the side. Right? And 5 hours later, you're still standing there trying to spot this elephant that they're trying to point out for you guys, right? No matter if you have those farlookers, what are they called? Fabkekers. Binoculars, there we go. The farlookers, right? You still can't see them. And they're pointing, and everyone's at different angles when we're pointing, so it's pointless to point. Right? And you have this mission to try and see the thing, even though there's an elephant right in front of you, hiding behind a tree like this. It's one of the weirdest phenomena in nature, how you don't see something. The biggest land animal on this earth is right in front of you, and you still can't see it. And when you finally see it, the reason why you see it is because you're no longer looking like this, now you're looking like this. Your perspective has changed on how you see the image in front of you. Then you can finally spot these animals that you should have spotted from the first point because it's a massive thing in front of you, right? Your perspective is more important than your eyesight, actually, when it comes to spotting these animals in the wild. And you look at these game rangers, right? They are trained to see the different perspectives when they're looking at animals as well. Have you noticed how these guys can see things that we never see, right? It's hilarious experiencing that delay from when the game ranger spots the animal and says to everyone, there's a rhino. And then there's this dead silence. Ah, there's the rhino, right? And then someone sees it. It happens every single time. And it's about, by the time that you guys have seen the rhino, he's already on to the next animal, right? It was hilarious this week to experience it with my Swedish family as well, because it was different. There's a oh, there the nooshoorning. Oh, now we see it, right? So, I had that wonderful experience this week. Now, you know that's what they call a rhino, a nooshoorning, nose horn. That's the name for a rhino. What's a hippo? A vloedhest. A flood horse. A river horse, basically, right? Okay, well, we call it a sea cow in Afrikaans, so whatever. Now, these rangers train themselves to see these animals in the correct perspective. They know that when they're going through a green patch, they're going to look for something brown moving, right? They know that when they go into a dip, they're going to try and smell whether the animals are close or not. They've learned to train their faculties to see the things from the correct perspective. Have you guys ever been on a night drive where these rangers find chameleons in the trees? A chameleon's job is to be camouflage. By definition, these guys spot them left, right, and center. No idea. And they put the light on and say, there's the chameleon. And I'm still looking at it like, no, that's not a chameleon, but that's a tree. Right? It's amazing to see the eyesight and the difference from perspective of the same thing we're looking at is redonkulous, is the only word I can think of to explain it. And this week's parasha, Parashat Shelach, is all about our visual perception as well. Now, the parasha this week is famous for the story of the 12 spies that go to Kukulur and Tur through the land of Israel to see what it looks like. But at the end of the parasha, we have a few commandments as well. We have commandments, for example, like the commandment to give challah, the first portion of your dough, to the Levite. And there's also the commandment of wearing tzitzis, these little strings, the okis miretokis, the strings attached to the corners of our garments as well. Now, the parasha itself is quite interesting because the whole parasha is bookended by a commandment to use your eyes. In the beginning, right after we get all these names that Baron read for us here of the tribal leaders who are sent to go spy out the land, we get the commandment, Ureitem et haaretz. You shall go and see with your eyes. Ureitem, re'eh means to see, right? You shall go and see the land for yourself with your own eyes. Seeing is believing, right? And at the end of the parasha, completely seemingly unrelated, is the commandment of tzitzit. But what is the commandment for tzitzit? Ureitem itoi. You shall see them and remember all the Lord's commandments. So there's a connection between the spies and the way that they use their eyes and the tzitzit at the end of this week's parasha. Now, those of you with poor eyesight, you guys are in for trouble. Because I've got a question for you. One of the blessings we said this morning has to do with saying, page 26, we have the morning blessings. One of them is, blessed are you, Lord, who gives sight to the blind. Are you allowed to say that blessing?
Because we're not blind, we just clearly.
I can see clearly now. Well, what about a blind person? Is a blind person supposed to say that blessing? This is a bit of a debate between our sages. So, the Mishnah Brura comes along, and it says, yes, they're supposed to say it. Even if you're blind, you should say that blessing. Which, by the way, if you look at the blessing, blessed is the Lord our God who gives sight to the blind. That sounds like an oxymoron, right? By definition, someone who's blind doesn't have sight, right? So it sounds like a miracle, someone being healed from the blind. But we say it every single morning. Why? Because every night you go to bed, you close your eyes, and it's not a guarantee that your eyes will open the next morning. So we have to say that every single morning. But even a blind person should say this because, says the Mishnah Brura, look at the Hebrew behind the blessing. What does it say, and what do we say in the blessing? We say, Baruch atah Hashem, pokeach ivrim. Ivrim is your eyes. Or sight, but pokeach is the word they used in the Hebrew. What does pokeach mean? It means more than just seeing something. The root word there, pokeach, means becoming perceptive of something, discerning, understanding reality through the correct lens. I can see clearly now. That's what the word pokeach means. It doesn't just mean seeing things. It's the word we use for someone who's bright. Someone who's bright is pokeach. He's intelligent. They see the bigger picture. It's the same word that was used when Adam and Eve finally figured out, it says they saw that they were naked. They realized that they were naked and they saw the bigger picture of what just happened when they ate that fruit. That's the word over there. It's more than just light hitting the rods and cones in your eyeball. Therefore, a blind person is allowed to say the blessing and should say the blessing because it refers to something bigger. Seeing something from the correct perspective. That's why we have the saying, for example, oh, I see what you mean. Right? It's more than just seeing with your literal eyes. It's understanding and getting that perspective and the proper insights of what the true story is behind the story. Just like when you see the elephant eventually, because you've zoomed out and you finally saw the bigger picture, and now you can see the elephant for what it is, or you can see the trees for the forest, or the forest for the trees, right? That whole idea. And that is the main problem with the 10 spies in this week's parasha. And the bad news that they brought back after seeing the land and seeing the fruits with their very own eyes. We often have the saying, seeing is believing. These guys brought back the actual fruits, and they could see it with their own eyes, and they still didn't believe the promises of Hashem. They still didn't believe the good news of the two witnesses, or the two spies. Two witnesses as well, I guess there's a Revelations lesson there as well. Why? Because they didn't see it from the correct perspective. Even though they saw the fruits with their eyes, They didn't understand the meaning of it and see it through the correct lens. It's almost as if Joshua and Caleb were the only ones who were trained as game rangers to see things from the correct perspective. The other 10, they were just a blind minion on a Safari Sunset Drive, not knowing what was going on, just hoping for the best. And that's bad. 10 out of 12 had problems with their spiritual eyesight. 10 out of 12, we talk about the narrow path, right? Even Bafana only had 9 men on the field this week. 10 out of 12 of them couldn't see what was going on. That's a massive amount of people. And the question is today, how many of us have got that same spiritual malady? We have weak spiritual eyesight. And we see again how skewed their perspective is when they talk about the giants that they saw in the land of Israel, right? What do they say? They say, we looked like grasshoppers in their eyes. So they saw themselves through the eyesight of the giants. That's the completely opposite perspective of what Moses sent them to do. Moses said to them, go and see for yourself the land, the mountains, the valleys, the honey and the milk and all the fruit and all these things. Instead, they saw themselves through someone else's eyes, through the eyes of the giants. Except for Joshua and Caleb. They, however, they looked at those giants and they said, they will be our bread. We'll eat them up for breakfast. They're going to be toast. It's literally what they said. We will devour them like a plague. So the 10 spies said, we looked like grasshoppers in their eyes, which means look how small we looked. These other 2 said, we are like the grasshoppers that are going to devour all of them like grasshoppers in a plague. They saw the exact same thing, the exact same animal like we do in the Kruger, but they had 2 completely different perspectives about it. And that's a lesson that we learn from the parasha. And another commandment in this week's parasha, the commandment of challah. Right, so challah. Today we call the bread we eat on Friday night the challah, but the original name challah is the term used for the first fruits offering of your dough. You're always supposed to give a first fruits offering of your dough to your local Kohen from the batch of dough that you're making. Why? So that before you even bake the bread, you learn to get perspective and realize that God is the one who supplied this bread for you in the first place. They will be toast for us. It teaches us every time we make challah and take off that first portion to have the same perspective, to look at life through the correct lens, that God is the one who gave you that sustenance. And if God is the source of your sustenance, He can give you giants for breakfast as well. We're supposed to remind ourselves of this every single time we make bread. How often do you eat bread? Says Kosam daily. Ne? That's how often we're supposed to remind ourselves. And Yeshua hints at this lesson over and over again throughout the Gospels. For example, when Yeshua heals the blind man in Mark chapter 9, the story contrasts how some of those Pharisaic leaders can't see the signs of the Messiah. But the guy who he heals was blind from birth. He now sees that Yeshua is the Messiah, and he tells him, this guy is surely the Messiah. It's putting them in contrast to each other to show the different perspective of the eyesight. These guys have had eyesight their whole life long, yet they still couldn't see the Messiah rock. The guy who was blind from birth, the first time he could see, he saw the Messiah and realized this guy is the Mashiach that's promised in the Torah. A chapter earlier in the book of Mark, Mark chapter 8, Yeshua performs a miracle of feeding 4,000 people with 7 loaves of bread. I've got guests in my home this month, and I also wish my bread would last that long. He feeds 4,000 people with 7 loaves of bread. Anyone who sees that miracle should surely never doubt him again, right? What's the very next story after he feeds the 4,000? They climb in a boat and they see, oops, we only brought 1 loaf of bread with. And they start worrying. They literally just saw him multiply 7 loaves of bread to feed 4,000 people. And all of a sudden, oh, we've only got 1 loaf of bread. What are we going to do? That's how quickly they lost the perspective and the proper eyesight. And Yeshua gives them a teaching. He says, beware of the chametz of the Pharisees and the Herodians. They think he's talking about the bread they didn't bring with. That he's angry that they only brought 1 loaf of bread with. They forgot to bring patkos. That's what they think it is. And Yeshua gets angry with them. Yeshua says to them in the very next verse, do you not see? Do you not perceive? Pokeach. Do you not perceive what is going on here? You have eyes, but do not see. You have ears, but do not hear. So are we any better off than those disciples? No, because we make the same mistakes day in and day out. Another example of this lesson is after Yeshua's resurrection. He's walking on the road to Emmaus and he encounters 2 of his disciples. And they're talking with him, they see him, they're eating with him, they spend hours in conversation with him, yet they don't recognize him as Yeshua, even though they were his disciples his whole life long, before his crucifixion and resurrection, until he breaks the bread. Only then do they say, wow, was that not the Mashiach we ate with and learned Torah till our hearts were burning? Only then did their eyes open when they saw the correct perspective that it was Yeshua. So the issue is not their eyesight, it's their perception. And we need to make sure that we don't make that same mistake. We need to go for almost a daily eye check. I know none of us like to go to the eye check. When I was a kid, I used to walk into the optometrist's room and memorize the thing as I walked past. And then I went and sat down and the E-A-R-E-E-M and then he'd ask me and I'd pass the test. Right? I thought I was clever back then. Now I know that maybe I shouldn't have done that. But I can see animals, so I'm fine. Okay. So the issue is not their eyesight. The issue is your perception. We have to learn to see Hashem and to see Yeshua in all the aspects of life that He reveals Himself to us in daily life through our Torah studies every week in these parashas. That's why Hashem also gives us the mitzvah of tzitzits in the parashah. He says, when you see them, look upon them, you will remember all my commandments. Because every morning when we get dressed and we put on the tzitzits, you say that to prepare yourself for the day ahead, that you have to have the right perspective in this day ahead. Therefore, when we recite this verse, we did it this morning in the Shema. This week's parashah is actually one of the 3 paragraphs in our Shema, where we read the tzitzits. Tradition is when you say it, you're supposed to, there's a bunch of places where you kiss the tzitzits, and then there's one place where you read this, you shall see them. You're supposed to actually dangle your tzitzits in front of your eyes, just like the dazzling zebra's black and white stripes, to remind yourself to get the right perspective in your outlook for the day ahead. It helps us adjust our lenses every single morning, just like reciting the blessing in the Siddur, who gives sight to the blind. It's a daily reminder that as soon as you open your eyes, to make sure that what your eye beholds this day must be seen from the proper perspective. What is the perspective? That with the help of Hashem, you can defeat any giant that's before you. Whether it be a literal one like Og, king of Bashan, or whether it be an elephant that you can't see because it's hiding behind one little thorn bush, or whether it be a metaphorical giant that's laying before you in this day ahead. We need the vision to see that doing the will of Hashem leads us to the promised land. Not just to spot a leopard, but to spot a lion. The Lion of Judah, the Mashiach, who will be seated on his throne. They gave up the promised land because of this sin of the 10 spies. If we listen to Hashem and do what He says, He promises us, we will see the Lion of Judah seated on his throne in Jerusalem. We will see the bread of life Himself, Bichala, and witness the Son of Righteousness who has the healing in His wings. That is the good news we're supposed to see on a daily basis, that you can spy with my little eye in this week's parasha. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Kyk hoe kyk jy vir my.